to talking about the boys' camp here, and if you go back in, there's still quite well done docks back in there. They have a little church that faces south. A lot of buildings back in there, but just a sort of it reminds me of the residential schools. It reminds me of what happened down in the States with the day schools. I grew up a hardcore Lutheran when I was a young man, and when I got off to university, it took me a while to figure out that religion isn't such a great thing. Not a lot of good things have come from it sometimes. Not to say that I don't believe, I do. I've just changed the way that I see the world. There's good and bad wherever you go, no matter where you go. That's what I've come to realize. So back behind us is the Deuxième site. If you guys flip up your little map, it's a 1400 site. It's a 15th century. And I was telling my crew here that a couple of different families from Sudbury own this area. I'm not sure in a perfect world why they were allowed to buy it. It's an archaeology site, it's a sacred site. But there's a couple of really important things that were found here, even though it's only 600 years old. Number one, they found some red ochre nodules. Red ochre. Really important because you can see the pictograph site from here. Number two, they found some lithics. So that's an archaeology term for things that are either debitage, which is flakes that are useless, or things that might be chipped into arrowheads or cutting blades or scrapers. And the other thing they found back in here is some old laurel pottery, some shards. So it sort of fits with pottery that was maybe a little bit older than the site. The reason that you should think and really listen about the red ochre part of it is because not too far from here, due south about 90 kilometers, is Nanabojung, the house of Nana Bojo. On the maps it's called Devil's Warehouse, a name given to it by the Jesuits, who thought that Nana Bojo was a devil. And that's not too far from there is Devil's Armchair, big arch with a hole in the middle. Very big storm through that about 4 years ago now. It's no longer an arch. Big winter storm out at Superior with 60-foot waves wiped it out. So there's not a lot to see there now. There's a young lady by the name of Brandy McDonald who's doing her PhD at the University of Missouri. She's now in the U.S. She's a Canadian. And she's found out that wherever you mine or quarry red ochre, every site has a fingerprint, and the fingerprint is the amount of trace minerals that are in it. So she's figured it out that if we look for red ochre and have a piece of it and analyze it, we can probably find out where it came from. So if you're following where I'm going with this, you wonder if those red ochre nodules might be from Nanabojung. You might think that maybe those red ochre nodules might have been involved in a burial somewhere here on the lake, because red ochre was used to paint the body in some villages' tents. You wonder if the ochre that was found there might be the same ochre that's there, that was used to paint the pictographs at Chris Island, at Loon's Cry, and at Dog. And we're going to talk about the new submerged pictograph site that we haven't been able to find because it's underwater, but something that Archie Nolan talked about when he was still with us. And the way the wind's going today, I think we're going to get lucky and get up to La Calle. I'll be able to show you where I think it is. I'll never know for sure. So the Deuxième site. So as an archaeologist, or even just as an old retired family doctor, you sort of think, it's only 600 years old, no big deal. But that ochre kind of links a lot of stuff on the lake here, okay? And it reminds us how sacred this lake is. It's in the middle of a greenstone belt where all the colonials are trying to mine the hell out of it for gold and copper and all the rest of it. It's on the most important trade route, canoe route that I know of in America, north-south. There's two oceans, Lake Superior to the Atlantic and James Bay to the Arctic. Pretty important lake. Admittedly, when I first came up here the first summer, So that's the site. The boys' camp, as I said, it's still in the courts right now, being settled. I can't remember how many kids were.
When did that operate?
Back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So it's like 20 years. Might even be further than that.
Pretty new.
So, but it's typical for the states. It takes forever for it to get through their system. If you live on the lake here and you have a boat, it's a very interesting place to go tie up and walk through, because there is an old traditional trail that connects the camp to the bottom end of Korshak Bay, which is the next big bay up north of us here. And we've often wondered whether that might have been an old ancient trail at one time. Because remember, we're now coming into the center of the lake, and in the spring, when the whitefish were running along Wabbers Island, Rabbit Island, and the perch and the pickerel and the pike were running over on the bank over in front of my place, this would have been the place to be.